I am 74 years old, and I want to tell you about the word my wife used. Not in anger, not in the heat of an argument that produces language regretted by morning, in a conversation, quiet, deliberate, the kind a woman has when she has chosen her words in advance because she has decided that this time the words need to land properly and not be deflected by the man across the table who has spent 26 years being very skilled at deflection. She said, "Frank, you are a ghost in this house." I started to respond. She put her hand flat on the table. She said, "I do not mean you are absent. I mean you are here and I cannot feel you. You move through the rooms, you eat the food, you sleep in the bed, but there is no weight to you in this house, no warmth, no presence that changes the temperature of a room when it arrives. You are here the way a ghost is here, visible, untouchable, and the children and I have been living with a haunting for so long that we have started to treat it as normal, a haunting." I sat with that word for a long time because I knew exactly what she meant, and I knew something else. I knew that 3 days earlier at the company's annual dinner I had been, by every available measure, the opposite of a ghost. Toasts made in my direction, stories told at my expense that I'd told better myself. The room loose and warm and full of the specific energy of an evening that was going well largely because of the man standing in the middle of it. The life of the party. 3 days later, a ghost in his own house. Both of those things were true at the same time, and only one of them was killing something. A ghost is not an absence. That is what I need you to understand. That is the specific and devastating precision of the word my wife chose. She was not describing a man who was never home. She was describing something considerably more complicated and considerably harder to fix. A man who was home and unreachable, present in the technical, documentable, alibi-providing sense of the word, in the building, at the table, in the bed, available to be pointed to as evidence of a husband who came home, who did not disappear, who was not the kind of man who prioritized the office over the family in the obvious measurable way, but not there, not in the way that changes the temperature of a room. I had 2 modes, professional and dormant. At the office I was fully inhabited, every faculty engaged, the wit and the warmth and the social intelligence of a man operating at the full extent of his capabilities in an environment that recognized and rewarded those capabilities. At home I powered down, not consciously, not through any deliberate act of withdrawal, through the automatic, habitual, decades-long process of a man who had decided somewhere deep and unexamined that home was where you recovered from being fully alive rather than somewhere you continued being it. The office got the inhabited version, the house got the shell, and the shell moved through the rooms, ate the food, slept in the bed, responded when spoken to with the minimal viable engagement of a system running on low power. My wife and children were not living with a husband and father. They were living with a haunting. And hauntings, however benign, however well-intentioned, however financially reliable, are cold. My youngest son, Peter, told me something last year that unlocked a room in me I did not know was closed. He is 38 now. He said it at my birthday dinner, not as a wound, as an offering. The kind of honest thing a child says to a parent when the parent is old enough that the truth feels more like a gift than an attack. He said, "Dad, when I was growing up, I used to test you." I asked what he meant. He said, "I would say something at dinner or in the car or just in a room where you were sitting, something that required a response. Not a big thing, just something. And I would watch to see if you were actually there, if the thing I said had landed somewhere in you, if there was someone behind the eyes who received it." He paused. He said, "You failed the test more than you passed it, and I stopped testing after a while. Because failing a test that often eventually tells you something about the test." He was not angry. He picked up his fork. He said, "I am telling you because I do the same thing to my own kids sometimes, and I catch myself. because I remember what it felt like to be on the other side of it. I looked at my son across the birthday table, 38 years old, catching himself for his own children, interrupting the inheritance, and I thought about all the tests I had failed. All the small, quiet, entirely reasonable bids for contact from a boy who just wanted to know if his father was in there. The ghost behind the eyes, failing the test. 3 questions. Answer them with Peter's honesty. First, take the test yourself. Think about the last conversation you had with your child or your partner, the last ordinary one, not a significant discussion, a Tuesday evening exchange. Something said in passing that required your presence to receive properly. Were you there, not physically, were you actually in the room behind the eyes? Was the thing they said received by a person who was fully inhabited and paying attention, or did it land in the empty space where you were sitting and dissipate without a trace? If you are not sure, they are not sure either, and not sure over years becomes the answer. Second, ask your partner which room in the house they feel you most in, not which room you occupy most frequently. Which room carries your presence most fully? Where do they feel you as a weight, a warmth, a temperature change? If they cannot answer quickly, if they have to think, or if they arrive at an answer that surprises or embarrasses you, that is the geography of your haunting made visible. Third, schedule one inhabited hour tonight, not a grand gesture, an hour, in whichever room your family gathers. With the professional mode disengaged and the dormant mode disengaged, and the full, warm, socially alive version of you that your colleagues receive freely brought into your own house and pointed at your own people. No phone, no low power mode, no shell, the inhabited version, the one that changes the temperature of a room when it arrives. Bring it home. I have been thinking about why the ghost exists. Not as an excuse, as an understanding. Because a man who understands the mechanism of his own damage is a man who has at least the theoretical possibility of dismantling it. The ghost existed because presence is expensive, real presence. The full, inhabited, temperature-changing, test-passing presence that a family needs from the person at the center of it. That presence costs something. It requires the full expenditure of the self. The wit and the warmth and the social intelligence and the complete attentiveness of a person who is genuinely not performatively there. I spent that currency at the office, freely, generously, without rationing, and came home bankrupt. Not of feeling. Feeling was there. The love for my wife and children was real and constant and not in question, empty of expression, of the capacity to take what was inside and make it available, to let it out into the rooms, to be warm in the specific way that requires not just the emotion, but the willingness to spend the energy of showing it. The ghost is not a man without feeling. The ghost is a man who stopped spending the currency of expression at home because home was where the currency went to rest. Barbara was right. My colleagues called me the life of the party. My wife called me a ghost. Both of those things were descriptions of the same man making the same choice about where to be fully alive. I was spending the life of the party somewhere else. Go home tonight, not to haunt the rooms, to inhabit them. Walk through the front door and do not power down. Stay fully lit. Pass the test. Be the temperature change they have been waiting for. Be present in the way that ghosts cannot be, in the way that only the living can, while you still are.